Oh
JoJo's
no, it's
Bizarre
JoJo Part
Adventure.
3.
Part 3, Season 1. Alright, I get to begin on this wonderful.
Hold up. When you say Part 3, Season 1, is it just...
This is
It's
just
before they go to
before
Egypt.
Egypt season.
So you even broke it up further, okay.
Honestly, one of my favorite experiences ever. I remember absolutely loving the idea of stands. It was crazy, it was contrived, none of it made any sense, and I couldn't stop watching it. The format was clear. This group, starting from just a few Joestars into Polnareff, Kakyoin, Abdal, and eventually Iggy, but obviously not this season. At the time, I fucking loved it. Looking back at it, it isn't the best that JoJo's Part 3 has to offer, but it does bring some classic Part 3 moments. More specifically, Jotaro being one of the best Chads to ever grace the realm. At the end of the day, Part 3 Season 1 is great in a few ways, but overall isn't doing what a lot of the other seasons, the better seasons of JoJo's is doing.
This was a cool transition from Part 2. You meet Joseph as an old man, not an old man, because you meet an older man version of him in Part 4, but middle-aged Joseph, who I thought was a decent character. He goes to see Jotaro and teach him all about his stand. Granted, Joseph gets a pretty dog shit stand, but neither here nor there. Joseph and Abdal you kind of just start with, but then you get through, you fight Kakyoin, and he's just like, yo, join the boys, it's okay. You fight Polnareff, you're like, okay, join the boys, he's like, okay. And then they go on plenty adventures throughout, and I do definitely appreciate that aspect of it, although I assume that the second part of this part is on this tier list in the future, and I do think that part is better. So I do think this part is great, but I don't think it is as good as the second part, and I'm gonna leave it at that.
I think Part 3 is good. I agree. It's like I think it's overrated. Like Part 3 is not even anywhere near my favorite. But like, you can't like discredit what it did for JoJo, because like it brought back Dio, and they like the way they explain how stands came about is fine. I think it's actually pretty funny. It's also like the Part 3 is also kind of like the catalyst for everything that happens after this point. It's almost like a soft reset of JoJo's, honestly, which is for the better, I would say. Even though I did like Haman, but the potential of stands was way better. It's great. I like it a lot. It's formulaic as fuck, like Justin was saying, but you can't stop watching it because it's so self-aware almost of how formulaic it is and takes advantage of that. And like they crank everything up to 11. The action's way better. The characters are great. Instead of like Part 2 kind of had this thing where like they traveled around, a little bit here and there. Part 3 kind of took that and they're like, okay, let's just like have the boys go across the entire world, and that was cool. I like that. It definitely brought a lot of opportunities to change the setting around and maybe have certain concepts and ideas that you normally wouldn't see. It was good. The only thing about Part 3 I don't really like is like it gets kind of boring, because like Villain of the Week is fine, but I feel like the way Part 3 formulates it is like they don't give the villains enough time to really like be really interesting. They're just kind of like, they just show up for an episode, they get their ass beat, they have their gimmick, whatever, and then it ends. Usually episodes that have like more than one episode with the same villain is a lot better, like with The Lovers, I think, was one of them. And Judgment, I think, was also another one. Or Justice, my bad. The memes are awesome. Like, you got some of the best memes from Part 3. Like, do you understand? That's a good one.
Hail to you.
Hail to you. That's also a good one.
I think I'm putting this at the top of B.
Yeah, I was thinking.
It's weird to think of part 2 as better than part 3 but it is season 1, so.
So it's weird because I had part 2 in S, but I think I'd still put this part below part 2. In my opinion, I don't know if I think I'd put it A, but I guess the way that we have the list, that makes sense. I think. The issue is I think I liked it more than JJK.
Wow. I didn't like it as much as JJK. And like, unlike part 2, part 3, I actually got bored with some of the episodes. Part 2, I never actually got bored. Like, I never got fully bored. Like, part 3, I remember there's episodes where like I was just like watching it without really thinking about anything. But then there were some episodes that are like really funny, and it's just like, okay, well, this is pretty engaging. I don't know. Part 3 is just inconsistent for me. Like, when it hits, it's really good, but when it misses, it's like, damn.
Don't have a strong opinion
You okay
on
with
moving
this?
it anywhere, so I'm okay with that. Yeah.
I'm fine with this.
Next, we have Tokyo Ghoul. Sorry, Tyler.
Wow.
Tokyo Ghoul has a pretty cool premise that a lot of shows do to some extent. It's just another one of those, one race is different than another. How does this affect society? How does society react to both races? How do the races react to each other? It turns a shy, naive individual into a amalgamation of both, and he has to try and deal with the benefits and the pros and cons of both societies, that being human and demon. And at first it's decently interesting until it turns incredibly cynical, incredibly fast, and it follows a character study of someone becoming tortured relentlessly. The show turns into a power level contest, and the aspect that Kaneki's torture changes him as a character directly relates to him as a person of power, and in the ways that we'd want him to change as a character for the betterment of both of the aspects of his life, that being demon and human, can come off as cynical, especially since we're covering season 1 and 2 with this one. So in season 2, when he dips from the people that he knows and loves, really kind of betrays the whole idea that they're going for, with him trying to cover both worlds as between demon and human, which obviously is what they're going for. When you look at the last episode, it doesn't do anything too special, and the anime definitely suffers from things that it goes off course with compared to the manga, but I don't know quite as much as that. As Quinn would know, so you can take over.
Tokyo Ghoul is excessive in all the wrong ways. It's like, you got a cool premise, and like Jess was saying, it would be cool if they explored more of the relations between human and ghoul rather than just like, let's showcase how cruel the ghoul world is, especially for a half ghoul like Kaneki, who was formerly human. It comes across as like unnecessarily unfair to Kaneki and to everyone else. It's not a good feeling. Like, it's not like Attack on Titan where you can rationalize what's happening, like, for how awful it is. That's my biggest issue with it out of the way. As far as characters go, they're okay. Kaneki's kind of interesting, but then when he goes off the deep end, he's just like any typical, like, depressed main character, almost like a Eren Yeager, like season 4, where he goes against his friends and like doesn't feel very genuine of a character anymore, and his development doesn't feel natural whatsoever. Toka, the main girl, I don't actually remember much about her. I kind of like how she's a ghoul who tries her best to not eat people. I kind of like that aspect, but it's like, I don't know, it just feels kind of weak of a premise. I don't know. It's okay. Like Justin was saying, the anime definitely suffers a lot more because they trail off significantly from the manga. It's okay. I just don't like how dark it is, for like, because there's no reason for it to be this dark. They could like do something else with it, but they don't. So it's eh.
Alright, this is a D show.
Yeah, this is definitely like a D show.
I'd
for
rather
me.
watch AOT season 4 than Tokyo Ghoul, although it's close.
Oh
Yeah,
god,
we
you
got about
put
9 minutes. Okay.
Danmachi on here.
Yeah, we did How to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon. I'll start because let's do it. So this is a really short, really quirky RPG about this little dude with his big titty waifu goddess chick supporting him as he levels up and goes into a dungeon. It implements very basic RPG elements and has characters that do things. It's not going to be anything that I'm ranking too high.
Honestly, I think it's like for what it was good, but like it's really short. It's nothing crazy. So I remember enjoying it, but like I can't put it high.
I think the world's cool. I like the way it's set up, and I like the backstory. It's like not generic fantasy, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's literally that's literally the best I can describe the show. Is just it's all right. It has things that I don't like. Like I don't like the excessive tits in my face. Like I would rather have a compelling character than eye candy. But
You did better than Tokyo Ghoul. Good job.
yeah, I did better than
Pat on your
Tokyo Ghoul. Congratulations.
Another.
This
Oh,
one
okay, so
is
I've never seen
another-
this.
Okay, this is a me and Tyler.
I watched this. This is like a 12-episoder. I mean, for a horror anime, being the only horror anime I've ever seen, I don't really have much to base it on. Kind of generic plot, to be honest, but it was fine. I didn't think it was like too cheesy, but it was like teetering, and the reveal at the end kind of caught me off guard a little, but not too much. Like it wasn't like, oh shit, I didn't see this coming. But like overall, I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was anything special. There was a cool dynamic with the main character and the creepy girl that like everyone hated, but then he kind of like caught feelings for her. Like that was kind of cool. But overall, just a very mediocre show. I guess if I had seen more horror anime, I'd be able to give a better opinion on it. But since this is the only one I've seen, I think I'd probably put it maybe where it is, honestly. I think it's better than Elf and Lied. I don't know about Shield Hero, but I'll let you.
So it keeps its creepy factor for a decent amount of episodes. I think a lot of horror animes can suffer from not actually having a creepy factor and just being a jump scare / gross / monstrosity thing. Whereas the atmosphere and the tone of the show itself doesn't do a good enough job. It has a good amount of stuff that can creep you out, but it doesn't have a lot of the larger scale or truly terrifying things that something like a Corpse Party might have. It was definitely intriguing to see her do shit because she's so like aloof and so different to everyone. And then the twist at the end was okay. If not good, you can come off it being like, oh well, what? I didn't have a chance at that. Or you could come off as being like, ooh, I guessed it. So I think it's probably better than this. I don't really like Shield Hero, but
Is the goal to leave Demon Slayer as the only C-tier anime?
yes, it can be the pinnacle of average.
The mix of horrible characters.
Imagine Demon Slayer
with
being your
amazing
pinnacle of
animation.
average.
What
That is crazy.
what do you think Demon Slayer is for the average person? Like elite?
It's just like a hype battle show with no plot.
Oh, you think people have it as lower?
I like every time I see someone talk about Demon Slayer, they only talk about the art and the battles. I never hear them say
Yeah.
anything else. I'm just like, okay, if you were to ask them about anything else, what would they say? Do you think they would
Okay,
probably
so-
say that's okay?
Okay, so how would you change this ranking?
Oh, I wouldn't change it. Because like C is like the below average, but still not bad like D is. You know what I'm saying? It's like in that territory, even though I think it's actually bad.
Because it's split into 6 groups, you're actually right. C is actually below average because the average line is a ranking that doesn't actually exist.
We can make an argument like we could like probably put Shield Hero in C because it's also like a below average show, but like I feel like unlike Demon Slayer, it just deconstructs itself, and Demon Slayer doesn't actually do that. It's just bad. Like it doesn't ever like betray your expectations.
Demon Slayer
I feel
can't
like
deconstruct itself because it didn't construct anything.
exactly. That's they never constructed anything.
I bet you somebody would probably be pissed that Phantom Blood ranks higher than Demon Slayer.
Why?
No, dude, I feel like
someone would be
everyone
pissed
that talks about Demon Slayer would put it like A or S just because they're like, oh yo, the animation's sick, bro.
Exactly, that's what I'm worried about.
People might have a problem with us putting Konosuba in S because we're talking about, oh, the comedy's amazing, and then they'd be like, well, why didn't you put Demon Slayer in S for its amazing animation? Like one
Konosuba
problem
does
they
more
could
than that.
Here's
Yeah,
Konosuba has better
exactly.
characters,
Because I brought up
Konosuba
a
has better
point
plot.
where the characters develop, yeah.
I think there's shows on here that I like better than Konosuba that we ranked lower, but I think that's okay because Konosuba's like the elite of its genre. And-
I agree.
Animation's not a genre.
Yeah, but
Either way,
like
it's more
Konosuba's
than
just
that.
good in general. Like Demon Slayer has legit flaws that make it fucking god
I agree.
bad.
I'm actually surprised. Like, there's a few things on this list. Like, when we were going into it, I thought some things were going to be in certain spots, but they're not. So I
could see
expected
this.
Vinland Saga to be an S.
I could see this.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But we both kind of agreed that part 3 is kind of boring in some parts.
I think that's fine because I don't like when I think of part 3, I don't think it's the same as Fate Zero and Game of Life.
I agree. I think
Yeah, that's
this is
true.
up up.
It definitely isn't a higher league than those shows.
I think I like
Hey,
this more.
I
actually.
like this way better, actually. Yeah,
I like this
I was
better,
about
yeah.
to say. Yeah, this is way better.
I know Tyler doesn't like JJK that much, and that might have been what's pulling it down.
I don't dislike JJK. I still think it definitely belongs in A tier. I just think Finland. Well, we all think Finland's better according to the list.
I've even finished
I
Finland.
think
and
it's
I think
fine
it's
where
better than
it is.
JJK.
I think I don't know. I liked part 2. Well, I'm gonna leave that to next time because there's gonna be some tough discussions.
Right now, we have a very divisive tier list where you're either better or worse than Demon Slayer Season 1. And the entire list can be summarized by that trait. Death Parade encapsulates a bunch of simple games that take menial choices and make them ethically bound. So when you're bowling or playing darts, you're inflicting either emotional or physical damage with the other person that you're playing. This then creates quandaries between characters because obviously when threatened with certain types of violence or decisions having incredible consequences, it's going to cause dilemmas to what the person is thinking and the decisions that they make and whether or not they are doing morally justifiable things in their pursuit to win the game. With these games, the purpose of them are to facilitate the afterlife. After the game is over, the quote-unquote winner of the game is granted a second life. Basically, they're resurrected and are allowed to enter world again. All of the things that happen in Death Parade happen in basically a casino-like ethereal space that takes people who have died and puts them into these games. Once these games finish, the winner, quote-unquote, is decided by the game masters, and the game masters are arbiters. The primary arbiter that we follow is Decim. I don't remember if it's Decim or not, but
I think it's Decim. Well, they say in
Decim,
Japan,
yeah.
in Japanese they call him Decim.
Okay, Decim. And there are very strict rules that these arbiters have to abide by in order to facilitate the most
systematic method of determining who goes to heaven or hell. The way the show exceeds this concept is by blurring the lines between which characters in the games are actually sent to heaven or hell. For example, one of the best episodes in the entire show revolves around two killers who, by coincidence, have their stories intertwined, and both of these people have committed morally fucking tyrannical things. One of them is basically a serial killer. The game allows for the non-essential traits of these individuals to be pushed away for the morally and ethically important traits to come out in these people. So, for example, if one individual is fighting for their family and one individual is fighting for themselves, actions may correlate to show that the nobler thing to do that would grant someone, basically on the principles of humanitarian values, the ability to be resurrected by these arbiters who deem people basically worthy. And Deckham has a really, really tough job because with this killer situation, it's obvious that the lines are going to be blurred no matter what, because maybe you think that neither of them should be going either. Neither of them should be able to have a second chance anyways. And so the show doesn't pick the obvious decision where if it's two killers, it's going to be what you'd expect in that, they're probably not either going to go. One of the greatest scenes in the entire show involves a grandmother who flips the entire purpose of the show on its head. When you think of these games, you think of them as competitions where these people are trying to beat the other person. Obviously, they're spiced up a little bit, so they add a little bit more intrigue for the arbiters with stuff that physically harm or alter the people. The grandmother comes in very late to basically describe the opposite point of view of everyone else. She sort of embellishes the idea that she's fulfilled her life and that she can take the things that others take for granted, like the game itself, and the art of competition and enjoying the journey, without that grain of salt and with value. And win or lose, you look at her and go, oh, well, that's really weird because she played the game earnestly, and win or lose shifts the balance of what the game's intentions are and highlights how individuality can sort of balance out the fears of death and not being able to fulfill purpose and stuff like that. And then it takes that and kicks it through a 60-yard field goal because, holy shit, I forget the chick's name, but her plot line's incredible.
The girl?
Yeah, what's her name?
I forget her name.
I think it's Chiyuki or something like that.
Okay. Either way, her development as someone who comes in as an arbiter who tries to be the humanity of Deccan. And what I mean by this is these arbiters have to work in a very systematic way that replicates sort of legal systems in first world countries, and that they have to deal with words and laws as they have to uphold very strict processes and have to keep everything under basically like a common law where things are consistent. And that, like, if something happens, you'd be able to have precedent for what you're doing so that you'd be able to make judgments better. And when you add the human values to this process, it blurs the lines entirely. So if you have someone who's committed murder, the system may say, oh, you don't deserve a right to basically life anymore, or you don't deserve to be resurrected. However, when you look at the context and this person killed a man to save his entire family from a person with a gun, you sort of have a different perspective on what the true meaning of what that person's actions meant. And Death Parade hits this home several times with so many of their players throughout their game, and especially the girl. When we get to the later ice skating sections and we sort of learn how Decim and what's her name? Say it again, Tyler.
Chiyuki?
Chiyuki.
Yeah.
So how Decim and Chiyuki bounce off each other to then become, so they're so as opposites they become incredibly close and enjoy learning about the other's differing views. And then when Chiyuki's views conflict with the way that she lived her life and sort of what happened to her, it shakes her world, and we see her grow from that. And then eventually we see one of the best episodes in anime in the scene where Decim and Chiyuki journey back a little bit to try and figure out her arbitration on her life. And so this show is phenomenal. I highly recommend it to everyone, and it's gonna rank pretty high for me.
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot of it, but just a few things that I really liked about it. I thought that the way that each episode, especially the episodes that revolved around games, because most of them did, but not all of them did, but the way that they went in with like no memory of what happened to them, like they don't know that they're dead, they don't know where they are, why they're there, all that, and the way that over time throughout the game their memories kind of come back slowly, so then they get like pieces of the story and then finally realize like, oh shit, I'm dead, like this happened. I feel like that realization, even though it comes throughout all the games, they did it differently each time, with the first one being like a couple having issues, and then there was the one where both of them are innocent, and it was kind of like a sad story on both their parts. Stuff like that. And I also thought it was cool how you could literally watch an episode and be like on the verge of fucking tears, and then the intro just comes on, you're fucking dead again. But yeah, the last episode also stood out to me because Chiyuki's story is like actually really sad. The fact that she was like ice skating and that I forget, I think it was like a knee injury or something.
Yeah, she got injured and she couldn't ice skate anymore.
And then like that was her whole world, so then she kind of lost what she loved and ended up taking her own life. It really gets you in your feels, and I thought they did a really good job of the storytelling. I like the setting as well. I think a bar is like a perfect, like proper setting for the whole show. And I mean, although it's a pretty sad show, it has a lot of meaning, and I think that for what it was very well done.
So for me, my favorite thing about Death Parade is every single time you have new people playing whatever game it is that they're playing, every time they get a brand new memory, you can see what their current state of mind and being was at the time of that memory, which I think is really interesting. So you'll have characters, like a good example of this, I think, that the show did best with are the two serial killers, where they both seem to like each other a lot and they seem like well-to-do people. And then they start getting memories of the traumatic things that happened to them that turn them into not serial killers, but just turn them into murderers. And you kind of see how not only do they kind of like lose a part of themselves, like they're no longer smiling, they just only live to seek out revenge at this point. They don't find anything fun, they don't find anything interesting. All they want to do is get revenge for whoever it is that wronged them. And another cool thing about that episode specifically, and the rest of the show, is that the connection that two people have when they're playing this game isn't necessarily very easy to understand, because I mean, the first one, it's like pretty simple, right? It's like a couple. Like, obviously we know that they're together because of the way that they interact with each other at the very start of the episode. But the show does a good job at making it more interesting as time goes on. So like in the next time you got a teenage couple, but you don't really know how they're connected, and the show gives you pieces very slowly throughout the episode in order to show you what their relationship is and exactly how they're connected. And I think that the show does a really good job at subverting your expectation each and every single time a new person or people come into to play these games, because the games also reflect them in different ways. Of course, it would take a long time to explain how or why, but it's really, really well done. And that's probably my favorite part of the whole show, is like seeing these characters go from normal, well-to-do people into them finally realizing what their circumstance was and how they felt and what their thought process was at the current time of receiving those memories.
I think I'm going Death Parade all the way up in S tier. I don't quite know where I'm ranking it. Out of the 4 of these, I think I like that so far. What do we think?
I think I'd put it literally number 1 with what we've ranked so far, but I wouldn't be upset if you put it number 2.
Quentin?
For me, it's like Death Parade is like, it's so focused. Like, the focus never sways. I think it sways one time, and even then it has an important message, which is like the episode where the other arbiter comes in and like pretends to be a little boy or whatever. So that's hard though, because like I don't think it's number 1, because I think AOT Season 3 Part 2 has way better payoffs than Death Parade, as crazy as that sounds.